welcome. Welcome for a little counter-programming. We're about to, in the middle of a sports festival, talk about news. Woo! And why are we going to talk about news? Because I know half of the sports junkies are also news junkies. So I try to explain that the world is made up of news junkies, sports junkies, entertainment junkies, and if you're not one of those, you're a couch potato. So if you're a marketer, though, and we know that you're here to talk about sports, we also want you to consider what's happening over in news marketing and news advertising. Now, why do I think that's important? I think it's important because when I had a $2 billion budget at Microsoft and I was running the media, I said, how much are we spending on news? Well, they said, nothing. Zero? Really? It doesn't work? I said, well, go back to your computer models, and they came back and said, wow, actually it should be 20%. And then we ran advertising on news, sports, and entertainment, like anyone should. And the news sites for technology actually perform the best because news consumers are information consumers. And that means they're also better educated than a typical consumer, more income than a typical consumer, and consequently are going to likely be, for certain things like financial services, technology, really effective consumers. But the more I dove into this, people, when newspapers were just newspapers, nobody cared. They wanted their ads as close to the front page as possible, the most read sections as possible. But suddenly brand safety came along and said, no, you don't want your ads appearing in news. And we did a study, and you know what? The brand safety stuff really is a non-issue. That news stories have involved consumers who consume ads just like they do when they watch sports and entertainment. So what we're trying to do with the Future of News effort is to get CMOs to put news, sports, and entertainment on an equal playing field. Because it turns out that about 40% of news stories, particularly those news stories that require deep investigative or wartime journalism, have, because of these brand safety algorithms, been completely demonetized. And that means there is no support for journalism because of that demonetization. But don't worry, some of them have branched out to sports in order to pick up on that monetization trend. But in any event, I'm here with an incredible panel. The panel features Jeff Green, who's got really perhaps the most exciting platform for media placement that there is. And it has people who really are CEOs and managers of major journalism enterprises, and a consumer, right, who's got a budget, just like I used to have, who has to make the decisions. So I've got a great mix of people here. Maybe I'll start in the middle here. With some of those people who are running news organizations, who are buffeted by news demonetization, who are facing the kind of change from link click to non-link click, and are being, I think, double buffeted online, to tell us what their experience is right now in the news marketing, and tell us some of the opportunities that you see for a marketer out there. Maybe start with Latour, and then we'll go Meredith, and then we'll go back here, and then we'll look at the rest.
Well, great to be here, and Mark, thank you for the work that you're doing on putting a spotlight on the quality of news and the importance of news institutions. So there's no one here sitting in this audience who is not touched every day by the information and the reliability of information. As it pertains to your personal life, as it pertains to your political choices, as it pertains to how you run your business. And that's the fundamental premise for the Wall Street Journal, and I assume other publications sitting here as well. And that reliability of facts, reliability of news is actually the driving force for us as a business. And we just completed the most successful year in 142 years of publishing because demand for quality information is actually going up. Because more and more people are discerning that in a world where everything is changing from technology to politics to geopolitics to policy, That's what you need, and that will make the difference between good outcomes and bad outcomes. And we're seeing that monetized in two ways. Our primary driver for our revenue is subscriptions, and there we've seen better performance than ever before. And increasingly, marketeers are seeing the opportunity that already was there to embrace this notion at this very moment in time. And so we're leaning into that, one, by investing in high quality news, investing in new ways of associating yourself with the various news categories that we have. We are focused on doing vertical news, going very deep on different aspects of business and policy. And so you reach, as a marketer, you reach a very deep audience. You reach the people in the workforce, you meet the leaders, you get workflow tools from us that accompanies your news. And so we know more about these readers and users than ever before.
Great. I'll just, I agree with all that. I'll just add a couple things. And Mark, thanks for all you're doing in news. You know, maybe I'll put it in the frame that a marketer thinks in. We, the New York Times, reach 50 to 100 million people just to our apps and websites every single week. We have like roughly the audience of Sunday Night Football every day. To our sites and apps. We have a morning newsletter, which is like the equivalent of what a newspaper used to be, that has 17 million subscribers, 17 million daily subscribers, and 5 million people who open and read it every day. We've got the largest by audience podcast on Apple, happens to be a news podcast, The Daily. So the idea that marketers want to reach people, you can do that in news. Who are the people you're going to reach? Well, who needs news? CEOs need news, CMOs need news, anyone who leads a company or an institution or makes decisions or does anything that touches civic life. Those are the people who are engaging with news. And what are you engaging them around? I'm just, Mark, doing this in the context of marketers because we're talking to a room full of marketers. When you are with the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or any of the Gannett brands, you're next to things that are important and that matter. And I think what marketers want is for their brands to be important and matter. So I could be here all day making a case to you that I think Mark was beginning to make, that if we defund news, society has a profound problem. That is absolutely true. But I think, you know, CMOs and CEOs have companies to run. So I think the equally good case to make is it's just where the best audiences are and where they are most engaged.
So all great points by my colleagues here, and I think I will try to add a couple other perspectives or points as well. As one is any perception that news media is a dying industry couldn't be farther from the truth. Our audiences are all growing significantly. Across our USA Today network portfolio of properties, we reach 150 million unique visitors every single month. And on our social media platforms, we reach 97 million a month. We're growing at a pretty rapid clip. And the other thing is the folks that consume news and that are on our platforms are high intention to purchase. And so the results that our marketers get are better on the platforms than they are on some of the social media platforms. And finally, consumers want to go where they can trust the brand, where they can trust the information that they're actually consuming. Brands who associate with our brands, who are trusted by consumers, carry that trust factor. And so I think trust, we're growing, and we have high intent purchasers on our platform. It's a great place, I think, for businesses to be to advertise in the future.
Great. Jeff, maybe some things you're seeing relative to news buying?
Absolutely. So first, let me just say the three that we've just heard from all represent the news content itself. And I just want to underscore what they've said, that I believe what they do is really important for society. And, you know, I'm a huge advocate of the open internet, and I believe what they do is very important for the open internet. And the closer your government gets towards democracy, the more important it is that you have journalism. that you have a fourth estate. So I believe the work that they do is incredibly important. And it is important that we fund it. And I do think that in the past, there's been an allergy from advertisers and marketers to put ads on news because it was polarizing. And as especially American politics, but politics all over the world, including here in France, have continued to polarize. But that does not change the fact of what they've all said, which is that advertisers want to be next to things that matter, and these conversations are things that matter. And it is clear that you're reaching an audience that has more purchasing power and cares more about what's going on in the world, and as a result, it's important to advertise to them. They're just a better audience. I actually think that's one of the things that we can do in this conversation to appeal to marketers better, is instead of saying that this is sacred and important and therefore fund it, is to simply say the efficacy is there. It works. And so we're not asking for charity. I'm not encouraging any marketer to do it for charity. Instead, to do it because of the efficacy. And then, by the way, as a buy-side player, I would say to all of them, please describe your inventory well, describe the signals, make it easier for us to buy. They have everyone on this panel, by the way, has done a better job in the last few years of enabling that. So the progress is good, and that is why what you said is exactly right. News has never been in a better place for those that are doing well, but it's because they're forward thinking and looking for ways to monetize in a way that at times journalism has not. It's put its head in the stand and said, what we do is noble and therefore people should fund it. So they shouldn't ask for charity. I'm not asking marketers to give charity to journalism, but instead to go where the audiences are that are going to have an impact on your brand. And I believe that is often in news, and there is so much upside for you in efficacy that we should pursue.
Great. Now, Tracy, you're from the perspective of a news buyer. So how is that working out? What's the internals? Did you meet any resistance? Tell us your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to lend my voice to this topic. I too am very passionate about it. And I want to say ditto to everything that I've heard, but I want to pull on what Jeff said. Investing in news is not a charitable choice. It's a business decision, and one I'm here to re-underwrite in terms of the fact that it drives business. I'm somebody whose job it is to ensure that media as a practice is a profit center. News is a big piece of that flywheel for us. And from what I can gather, I'm observing sort of a variant, like a gradient nature to the way advertisers are thinking about news. There's those that are not in news and don't know it. Big problem. Those that are in news, but they treat it in a fleeting way. I'm in, I'm out. I travel with the flock. And that's a pet peeve of mine, in particular with the way the US sort of advertising landscape operates. And then there are those like me who invest through the cycle and believe that it's hypocritical to say, I want to reach people where they are and treat them like grown-ups and respect their choices and do it consistently. I think that that's really, really, really important. If you care about trust over time, and we certainly do, and I know a lot of brands do, I think the next part of that math sentence is consistency. I think so many marketers believe that choosing news means you have to choose a side. Just to bring it, analogous to sports, we're at Sports Beach. And by the way, I got distracted. I saw Alona, that amazing rugby player, just walk by, and I was like, oh my God, she's here. Hi, if you can hear me. Where was I? Got very distracted there. The point being that if you're the marketer who doesn't know that you're not in news, you have to go deep. Did you know that in tools like Jeff's, there's a button, and if you click it, you eliminate news from your media, period. And your teams might be doing that because they don't want to be caught in the gotcha news articles, ironically, where your brand is showing up against something that somebody else has deemed unsavory. There are other levers other than that box to ensure that you are not using the blunt force hammer that is brand safety as the excuse, but rather there's a lot of really clever ways to think about suitability. Keywords, strategic partnerships that I enjoy with these guys up here. There are ways to do the job and do it safely. And I'm somebody who, the regulator grades my homework. So you can trust what I'm saying. There's a way to do it and feel confident and convicted. And so I would just encourage people to think about your decision relative to news. Can you defend it? Do you understand it? And do you re-underwrite it often?
Great. Look, all of us as marketers are always looking for that space, that crevice, the place where there might be a buy, where there might be some extra ROI. So look, we did a survey of CEOs, and 90% of CEOs are, in fact, news junkies, someone who checks news 4 or 5 times or more a day, which is the definition of news junkie. And 86% of them thought and believed that their company should be buying on news. Now, I think the real number is a lot lower, because I think CMOs and media buyers and media agencies are checking little boxes on DSPs. And we're going to go to the CEOs this year and say, hey, tell your CMOs it's okay. We want to support journalism. This brand safety thing, they were making too much money off you for a service that, in fact, was demonetizing the news. So, look, I think it's an important cause. It's a reasonable cause for marketers. And as they said, it's not a charitable cause. It's actually a greedy cause. Because if you're successful, you'll be doing better, not worse, with your media budget when you figure out what the right proportion is. Now, look, this is Cannes in 2025. So you are not getting off the stage without talking about the role of AI in news and marketing. So I know you've had that question before, and you'll get it 5 more times before you leave, but it is the burning question. So we can start with Jeff, maybe, who's on the forefront of AI and media placement, and tell us what you think AI is bringing us.
Well, so what AI is bringing from the buy side is we're essentially using all the technology that we possibly can to better value impressions. And because we have the task of essentially looking at 17 million ad opportunities across the internet every second, that gives us way more to consider, way more choice than we've ever had before. So marketers have a tremendous amount of choice. And not only do they have a lot of choice about what inventory they choose, but what paths they take to get there. So not only is there 17 million ad opportunities, but once you choose that ad opportunity, there's often thousands of ways to get there, often an average of 6,000 paths to get there. All of these, given that we're making that choice 17 million times a second, or in 2 or 3 milliseconds have to decide which of the 6,000 paths we take, we are, of course, better off if we choose to use AI to inform those decisions and make the very best choices. We just need to make certain that those inputs include the widest consideration circle possible, meaning all the audiences and people that could possibly be interested. And you just want to make certain that you're not using brand safety tools. That's, by the way, where the checkboxes are that limit what you would be choosing. I think, incidentally, most of those have deprecated those, and it's at a much more granular level where the blocking happens. And that's where you just need to make certain that you're informed as a marketer, that you're keeping that consideration circle wide so that you, of course, are buying journalism, again, not out of charity, but because that's where additional efficacy and unlocks remain.
Meredith, so is the reporter of the future a bot?
I love that question. Let me say 3 things about AI. The first one is the most important. It is hard for me to imagine any machine going out into the world, a front line of war, or a neighborhood in LA where people's homes have just been destroyed, or and you name, even a locker room, right? We're at Sport Beach, and with judgment and expertise and humanity, getting the full story and translating that story with expertise and judgment and humanity the way a human being would. So that's the first thing to say. I think journalism is first and foremost a human endeavor by humans for humans. I will add to that, kind of to Jeff's point, I am thoroughly optimistic that all technology, all kinds of productive technology, and certainly AI, gives us extraordinary opportunities to make our journalism more accessible to people. You can listen to nearly every article on the New York Times today in an automated voice. I'm a runner. I read half the report that way on my run every day. And all of our recipes are now available with their appropriate metric conversion if you want to cook while you're here in Europe. Can't imagine anyone is doing that. And for our reporters, the ability to sort of comb through public documents to sort of find a corruption scandal. I think AI is there will be countless ways it will make our work better and richer and more interesting. And I think that AI innovation has to happen aggressively, and we should all be leaning into it with real regard for the intellectual property rights of the people who are making all that journalism, and by the way, making music and movies and everything else we celebrate here in Cannes. And I am a real believer that we can do aggressive AI innovation in a way that is good for the nation, good for the world, as long as those intellectual property rights are respected.
Thank you.
I think AI is going to make the news junkies hyper news junkies, because we are going to go deeper with research, create more meaningful, more targeted news and content, and we can slice it in so many more forms than ever before. So it's going to be hyper relevant to your clients, it's going to be hyper relevant to you, and that's a thing of beauty. How is that going to happen? Well, a lot of unknowns still out there. At Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal, we call this authentic intelligence, where AI and our databases are connected with humans making that judgment that Meredith just referenced. And we can do things, investigative work, that could never be done before without analyzing huge quantities of data. On top of that, we're going to be able to reach so many more people. I've worked in 7 countries, 3 continents, tried to build out the Wall Street Journal many, many times in different areas. With AI, translation and very nuanced and sophisticated translation has become so incredibly easy that you can couple it with contextual reporting without having to invest a lot. And so for you, this means that the brands that you know and love are going to be more international and are going to penetrate those markets even more deeply. So not only will the news junkies become hyper news junkies, but there'll be many, many more of them. And we're going to be, because this is a completely a new form of interacting, different forms of UX, not just the chatbots that we're seeing right now, so many more ways of doing that. We're going to be, as news producers, we're going to be alongside all these decision makers from the moment they wake up until the moment they fall asleep, and maybe even while they're sleeping. And so we are going to be there, and it's going to be net, I think, a very positive opportunity for those who embrace it. Last, on intellectual property, there is a massive battle looming, and we are making sure that intellectual property, we spend $1.7 billion a year, every year, to collect all this news. That cannot just be given away just because a bot so demands. And so we're making sure that we have a positive path forward with the platforms on AI, and make sure that that commercial value is guaranteed.
Fantastic. And Tracy, from a client perspective, AI?
Yeah, I think we're reaching a moment where, for how many years have you listened to people say, I'm waiting on technology to catch up with my ambition regarding personalization, to the point where, I almost couldn't tolerate the word personalization, but it's back with a bang. And I think that AI, that's the promise of AI for a marketer, is to be able to take advantage of everything you're using AI for in your properties, and then meet you where you are with really good dynamic content. Because where would we be if we just hand you the same bag of tricks, the same matching luggage as we always have, given all of the advancements that you're making? So we feel the pressure as a marketer to really dial that up and find all the ways in which we can reconfigure content and ensure that it is purposeful on your platforms. The other thing I would say is it will help us treat words like news, as they're meant to be treated, it's an amoebus term, and it means different things to different people. It's not just about hard news. You know, you've got sports news, entertainment news, culture news, etc., global news. And so I think that will allow us to bring that kind of nuance and be respectful of the fact that some of our news junkies are not reading the news cover to cover, so to speak. They might have a favorite section, and we can lean in that regard, and not just in news, but across the board. So I'm looking forward to being able to offer partners like these guys really good content that is an add to all of the hard work that's happening on their end.
I would add a couple significant ways AI is positively impacting our media business today. Number one is it's allowing us to have an even more personalized experience with every single consumer on our platform. And that leads to deeper engagement and more return visits, which will be good for our marketing partners as well. The second thing is we are about to be able to create a lot more content than we do today, because there's so many parts of the task in putting stories together that AI can start to handle and replace, and handle some of the more generic content itself. And so our journalists can actually go out and spend a lot more time finding new news, new information, new stories, new scandals. And so we're going to be able to have more content for not more money on our platform, but it's also content that we know consumers want to engage with, because we can steer in that direction based on what we know. And just one example I'll give you that we just launched on USA Today last week is a generative AI answer engine. And we're really excited about that, because our consumers can ask a question, get an experience like they get anywhere else on another AI search platform. All of the answers in the whole conversation comes from our content, the content we've created across our network. And that's about 60,000 stories a month. As that continues to grow, and as we have that data in hand, that can help us inform our content strategy. What do people want to know? What are they asking about? What do they care about? And we can be even more personalized and more engaged with our consumers based on what we know through this. So the AI technology is really, I think, a big asset to our company, to our industry.
Mark, can I add one beat that sort of inspired by what Tracy-Ann said? AI, before AI, after AI, with AI, what's represented on this stage from the news publishers are also brands that people love and rely on. We have Michael Barbaro here from the Times this week, and people literally stop him on the street. Someone came up to him at our party Monday night and literally said, it was the cutest thing. She said, "I shower with you every morning." You know, like to Tracy-Ann's point that news is like a much more broadly defined thing. Many people begin their news day with Wordle. 2,000 people every minute share their Wordle score. You know, so, you know, we are all making, you know, every CEO wants to be associated with the Wall Street Journal. These are brands people love at great scale.
Fantastic. So the brands will survive, but we need journalism to survive with the brands. And we need the brands to stand for the journalism that people really care about and that informs the world. Look, you have been an incredibly patient, quiet, thoughtful audience here for our news panel. Let me say that what you've heard is there's a dynamic marketplace for news that you have to be in. If you are the CMO, the CEO, or down somewhere in the planning department, go check out what your company is doing on news. Are you taking full advantage of the partnerships, of the sponsored content, of the news placement that others may not be? You've heard there's a dynamic marketplace. You've heard that intelligent clients are getting into the space, particularly in industries like financial service. You've heard that news with AI is going to be even more interesting, more hyper-personal, more in-depth. And that means it's going to be more than ideal for what I call in microtrends LASers, the long attention spanners. Because it is the long attention spanners who absorb information, read advertisements, and act on them, and are the real prize on the internet. So think news. Let me thank this distinguished panel for taking their time out today. And now back to your regularly scheduled sports programming.